surprising that after a return to South Africa, Comrade Frene formed part of the task force to establish the ANC's Women's League in the country. She helped to set up and become the convener of the Women's National Coalition, which brought together women from all walks of life across the political spectrum to draw a women's charter. This formation played indeed a critical role in ensuring that the rights of women, yes indeed, did receive proper attention in the negotiations process and were enshrined in the new constitutional order. Comrade Baleka, when you became a prominent player together with Comrade Frene in the negotiations process, we were not surprised. We knew that you and Comrade Frene and many others had been the real engines to ensure that women are properly represented in those negotiations. And we are pleased that the African National Congress acceded to that. And today, we have the most advanced constitution which respects the rights of women, upholds them, and protects them, as Comrade Prex-Governor was also saying. So thank you for all the efforts that you made. We are where we are today because of the dedication and the work that you and Comrade Frene and others played a key role in. Of course, no one can forget the role that Comrade Frene, Comrade Barbara Masekela, and our beloved departed Comrade Jesse Duarte played in the presidency. They were the triumvirate that truly ran President Nelson Mandela's presidency. You could not get anything past these three outstanding women and get Comrade Madiba to agree if he had not passed it through the three. So they were the three musketeers who really ran that office. And did they run the office well? I would say yes, they did. And some of us who worked closely with Comrade Madiba and Comrade Thabo Mbeki will probably attest to this, knew that even as we put proposals to Comrade Madiba, he would stress test them with the three musketeers. And Comrade Frene was amongst those. So this is a real tribute to the role that was played by Comrade Frene. And today I would also want to pay tribute to Comrade Jesse Duarte, and indeed to pay tribute to Comrade Barbara Masekela. The three of them made President Mandela's office really effective and come alive. As we bid farewell to Comrade Frene Ginwala, we must recognize that this struggle for equal rights and opportunities for women is far from won. As a society, as a state, and as a movement, we have to give full effect to the principles of non-sexism and gender equality. Despite significant progress, women are still underrepresented in positions of authority, responsibility, and influence across nearly all areas of public life. And despite the progressive policies that we have pursued since the advent of our democracy, women are still overrepresented amongst the poor, the unemployed, and the vulnerable. The face of poverty is still worn by the women of our country. As Comrade Frene would remind us, until we have achieved equality between men and women in all spheres of life, we will not be free. We will remember Comrade Frene as a pioneer in building our democracy from the ruins of apartheid. And it is quite informative to hear she found nothing. There was nothing that could guide her in putting a new parliament together, because you could not take a leaf from the system of apartheid to build the future democratic parliament. As part of the ANC's negotiating team, she brought all her legal training, her sharp and incisive mind, and her political conviction to the task of forging a new constitutional order in our country. Yet it was in her role as the first speaker of a democratically elected National Assembly that Comrade Frene had the greatest and the most enduring impact on our young democracy. Over the course of a decade in that position, she forged a new institution that reflected the great diversity, the struggles, the aspirations, the culture, and the practices of the people of South Africa. With her warm and deliberate determination, she forged an institution that stands at the center of our democracy. It is an institution that continues to this day to fulfill its constitutional purpose as the representative, the voice, and the champion and the instrument of the people of our country. She performed her role as Speaker with diligence, with fairness, and with great integrity. She was always mindful that it was her responsibility to serve the people of our country and to do everything within her means to advance their cause. Frene Ginwala lived, fought, and strived, as we all should, selflessly, honestly, courageously, driven by a deep and abiding love of humanity and, more importantly, the people of South Africa. She stood for a South Africa that was united in its diversity. She cherished a society where all may embrace and celebrate their many identities, their many cultures, their many languages, and their different faiths. She stood firm against the abuse of power and corruption. She stood firm against racism, sexism, and all forms of intolerance and prejudice. She stood for human rights for all, and indeed for the rule of law. To defend the aspirations of our Constitution is to honor the memory of Frene Ginwala. To lead lives of integrity, whether as citizens or leaders, is to uphold her legacy. Good thoughts, good words, and good deeds. These are the tenets of the faith that she was born into. She lived by those. Her life embodied those tenets. To her family, especially her beloved nephews, Zev, Cyrus, Sorab, we share in your sorrow. May you be comforted by the knowledge that Comrade Frene's spirit Her courage, her wisdom, and her generosity will forever be remembered. As we came into this hall, I had occasion to also meet 4 other people who cared for Comrade Frene, who must also be thanked for the work that they did over a period of 10 to 15 years. And there's Grant Zulu, there's Patience Ngwame, there's Ditonia Ndabana, and there's Joey Yende. These are the 4 individuals who also, together with her family, stood by Comrade Frene until the end of her life and cared for her. So let us thank them and applaud them as well. I want to end by a reference to something that I found out about Comrade Frene, her love for maps. She got excited once she had discovered or found these maps of our continent, an animated discussion about what she had found, being the map of Africa that was crafted in 1389, as it is said in the obituary, titled Deming Hunyi Du. And we got into a very long discussion about how those maps finally fueled China's great ambition to become a global player, even at that time, when Emperor Judi of the time got Zheng He to lead the biggest flotilla of ships ever amassed in the world, to set off from China to go to various parts of the world. And it is also said that it was during this period that the Chinese were the ones who discovered America, whilst we are told that Christopher Columbus was. But the important part is that it was this flotilla that came to Africa. It came to the eastern seaboard of our continent, and historians today record that the trade between Africa and China started. It was due to these maps that the Chinese launched their most historic global policy and reached out to many parts of the world. Having done a very interesting study of how Emperor Judi and Zheng He went around the world, it was quite an exciting conversation that I had with Comrade Frene about these maps. And I'm glad, Honorable Speaker, that the maps have been preserved, because in the preservation of these maps of our continent, Comrade Frene's memory is also preserved. I want to finally say, Comrade Frene, go well. Hamba kahle Mbokodo. If we ever had a Mbokodo, you are the Mbokodo that we really had. And I do want to say, Lala kahle, Madam Speaker. Go well and greet those that you will meet, those who are pioneers like yourself, or Charlotte Makleke, and many others. Greet them for us and tell them that we continue with the struggle to make the lives of our people better. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, comrades. Amandla. Thank you, comrades. Amandla. We thank the President. Siyabonga Maqabane. Cela ukuthi nihlale nibambe. Ke a le leboga hle. Ke kopa hore le dule fatshe. Nako e re siile. Thank you. Ngiyabonga Maqabane. I know ukuthi nifuna ukucula kodwa ixesha selibalekile. We thank the President for his address. And before I invite members of Comrade Frene's family to pay a tribute, I wish to sincerely apologize to the Speaker of the National Assembly, Speaker Mapisa Ngakula, who I committed the cardinal error of leaving out from my list of protocol. Madam Speaker, I hope you'll forgive me for a diplomat's cardinal error and that you won't cut my time in the National Assembly. I do apologize. I now invite Comrade Zav Rustomji and Comrade Godrej Rustomji. I called them both comrades because one was not called a comrade when we had the last tribute meeting, and he was most upset not to be called comrade, and members of the African National Congress. So Comrade Zav and Comrade Godrej, could I invite you?
Dear comrades and friends of our Aunt Frene Ginwala, dear celebrants of her amazing life, and dear mourners of the passing of her irreplaceable soul. Thank you for honoring her at this official memorial service. I'm Zavari Rustomji, the eldest nephew of Frene Ginwala, and I'm here to speak on behalf of our family, consisting of my brothers Cyrus, Sorab, and their families and other extended family members, including those that might be linked in via live stream, who are many continents away. Thank you also for the many messages and the tributes accorded to her life's work, both tributes paid here as well as since her passing. These have been overwhelming, and as a family we are humbled but also very, very proud of our aunt. Family of our great movement, whose origins began during the struggles against European colonialism well before 1912. The other family was our nuclear family, and although there was and is an overlap between the two families, we shared her in different ways. Much of what has been told today relates to Frene's contribution to and her relationship with components of our movement, but also her relationship with the evolving democracy, parliamentary democracy that we have. In contrast, I would like to briefly share some insights into our nuclear family's life with Frene Ginwala. And here I'll refer mainly to the experiences of myself and my brothers Cyrus and Sorab. Our interaction with Frene began in 1969, when our parents decided to send us to school in England, the backdrop being the increasing encroachment of apartheid principles into our education curricula. We were very fortunate that they were able to afford the privilege that we were given. At the time I was 11 years old, Cyrus was 8, and Sorab was a 2-year-old baby. Our mother, Khoshed Ginwala, or Khoshed Rustamji as she was also known, accompanied us for 1 year, during which she completed a program in hospital administration, and she then returned home with Sorab, where she continued her work in the public health service. Our mother Khoshed was herself a formidable woman to whom we looked up to. She, as was Frene, were brought up by their parents, our grandparents, in accordance with the Zoroastrian faith that the President referred to. The faith's theological basis is one of dualism, whereby we are born into a universe at war between the forces of good and the forces of evil. We are exhorted to espouse the principles of good words, good thoughts, and good deeds, respect for humanity, respect for nature and all forms of life, and to oppose injustice wherever it arises. Most importantly, it's believed that nothing is preordained, and that we as individuals must decide on our allegiance in this universal war, and we must live and die with our choices. Of course, these concepts are common in all religions. And although Frene was not religious in the orthodox sense, she and our mother both lived their lives applying these principles. In 1970, after Mom went back home, we were then enrolled in a boarding school, with our aunt taking responsibility for us as our guardian. And Sorab, when he was a little older, also joined us. Our aunt Frene lived alone in a small flat in London, and she made room for us during the school holidays and half-term breaks. I can only describe our experience as tough love. She had a huge influence on us. We imbibed a work ethic of thoroughness and professionalism, which has become deeply ingrained in our characters. She was a hard taskmistress. We worked according to a roster of shared household responsibilities, and rightly so. We were trained to dust, to vacuum, to clean house, wash dishes, iron clothes, do general home maintenance, and a whole range of other chores, including, you may be interested to hear, laying wall-to-wall carpets, which, I hasten to add, Frene exhibited an expertise. During these times, Frene would often be out of the house conducting ANC business, and on days when we had been so instructed, often through yellow post-it messages, we would sit in trepidation when we heard her key turning in the front door lock. If she'd had a good day, we breathed sighs of relief. However, there were many occasions, particularly when she had had a bad day at the ANC Penton Street headquarters, where she would storm in, her roving, razor-sharp eye never failing to find a speck of dust on the carpet or some unpolished section of the flat. I'm sure some of you have been subjected to that razor-sharp eye and mind. And we would be taken, as many of you have recounted, we'd be taken to task for achieving only 98% and not performing to her 100% expectation. Similarly, we imbibed the ethical values that our parents embraced, and these were reinforced through our interaction with Frene. Our consciousness of our privilege and of injustice had already taken root even before this, having had to understand why we had to leave our home, parents, friends, and other family at an early age and go and study elsewhere. Living with our aunt further enhanced our consciousness and understanding of the international nature of oppression and inequality, and of the common struggles being waged elsewhere in the world. We were also sensitized to gender inequality, and knowing Frene as you all do, you can just imagine the impact on 3 young, impressionable boys growing up in Frene's feminist home. Aside from the toughness, our aunt was very, very caring, very supportive, and very loving, making time for us in balancing the whirlwind of her liberation work, in the same way that she cared for her aging mother in Cape Town in the late 1990s. In summary, our Aunt Frene Ginwala had a profound impact on how we members of our nuclear family turned out, and we will love and cherish her efforts and her memory forever. After leaving Parliament in the early 2000s, Frene settled in Johannesburg, in the house next door to myself, my wife Betty, and son Godrej. She kept very busy with a range of projects and responsibilities, some of which you've heard of in earlier tributes. But in recent years, her age forced her to slow down, and we noticed a mellowing in her demeanor. But she was fiercely unhappy and critical of the degeneration in the leadership of our movement, in the leadership of public as well as private sector entities, and of the destruction of institutions that were built through great sacrifice and hard work. She also expressed considerable sorrow and regret at the extent to which this has permeated numerous layers of institutions and society. Yet, despite this, on seeing the green shoots of the reversal of this destruction, she expressed a hope that the next generation will take up the baton, live up to the original ideals, and rebuild. I would also like, with your permission, to take the opportunity to thank the other parts of our family, which the President has also thanked. Joey Lukiende Grant Zulu, who is with Frene for more than a decade and a half, and also to her caregivers, who really have greatly eased Frene's life in recent times, and our family is indebted to you for that. I did want to end by saying, rest in peace, Frene Masi, Auntie Frene. But I suspect that if Frene Ginwala was here today, she would look at us much as she's looking at us in this photograph, looking at us straight in the eye, and she would probably say, "No, I will not rest in peace. And I will come back to haunt you unless you get your act together and get our country back on track." So on behalf of Frene Noshir Ginwala's family, the families of myself, my brothers Cyrus and Sorab, please accept our thanks for this great honor that the state and our people bestow on her. And in keeping with Frene's hope, Frene's great nieces and nephews would like to pay their brief tribute to their great aunt, with your permission. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thank you, sir. We really appreciate the words, and I think we will carry on her legacy. We will definitely sharpen our revolutionary conviction to contribute to the ongoing transformation of our country. That's what we will promise you, the family, and we promise you. Can we have one of the children to come and speak?
fellow South Africans, distinguished guests, family and friends, it is my distinct pleasure to stand before you today on behalf of the youngest generation of the Ginwala Rustumji Union, namely my cousins Leah, Hannah, Ava, Sarosh and I, in order to celebrate the legacy and life of our great aunt Frene. Over the past week, our family has been inundated with messages of condolence. And on behalf of the entire family, I'd like to thank everyone for their kind words, gestures, and most of all, the deep-rooted desire to celebrate the life of this remarkable woman. It has been our pleasure to share Frene with not just South Africa, but also with the world. Ironically, I'm not the biggest fan of public speaking, and yet here I find myself in the role of being a speaker. Although if Frene were here today, she would probably say that a woman could do it better, and I think she's right. Both she and her sister Granny Koshid, together and independently, epitomized strength, independence, and resilience in the face of adversity and structural inequalities. I want to acknowledge the rich and diverse ways in which Frene was able to touch not just the people who knew her, but also the ordinary South Africans. We want to highlight her contributions towards laying the legislative foundation for our country in the unique position of power that she held, especially as a woman of color. From an early age, my cousins and I came to learn about her strong character, as well as to be very careful about our choice of words around her. I'll suffer through a lecture of conversations with her, which were far beyond our comprehension at that age, enabled us to think freely on critical issues. These interactions were instrumental in our character development, as well as instilling the important values of equality, anti-colonialism, non-racialism, and democracy. And these values have permeated into our own respective worldviews and practices. She encouraged the participation of underrepresented groups to ensure that institutions reflected the society it served. And our hope is that her inclusive and intersectional approach filters through generations of leaders in the private and public sector, both in the future as well as the present. So despite her lectures and us sometimes feeling out of our depth, we will forever cherish the space that she gave us to defend our opinions while thinking critically about the world around us. She kept us on our toes, she challenged us, and most of all, she allowed us to agree to disagree if we felt strongly. But most importantly, she didn't judge us. Frene, there's no doubt that you contributed at great personal sacrifice towards a more tolerant, inclusive, and hopeful future for all. And as we head, towards the final end of this service, my cousins and the family want to end off by saying that we're proud of you, not just because you were an outlier and the first to do many great things, but rather because from start to finish, you stayed true to yourself. Thank you, Frene, and thank you all.
Thank you. Our next speaker now is Mr. Lawson Naidu, who is going to do the vote of thanks.
Your Excellency the President, distinguished guests, as has been stated already, the family of Dr. Frene Ginwala are deeply moved and grateful for the outpouring of love and support that they have received following her passing on the 12th of January. The messages of condolences, the sharing of personal memories and anecdotes of Frene over many decades and from people who knew her in many different capacities as a family member, lawyer, journalist, academic, activist, and public servant, have indeed been heartwarming. The tributes received within South Africa, from the rest of the continent, and from across the globe have brought home to the family and to myself that Frene was a true internationalist who lent her support to struggles in many parts of the world, much of it directed at women's movements and women's initiatives, none more so than in Palestine. This memorial today is testament to the multifaceted legacy that Frene leaves behind. Thanks are due to the Presidency for honoring Comrade Frene this special official memorial. Our gratitude to all those who contributed towards today's arrangements. We also acknowledge the tributes paid to her today by the President and the various other speakers that I will not list, and the rich tapestry of tributes that we have heard, the anecdotes from comrades who have known her over many decades that tell of the many different sides of Comrade Frene. Your words and recollections will provide succor and a reminder, if one is needed, of the role of this extraordinary compatriot who committed her life to the struggle for freedom and then continued that work in prioritizing the building of institutions of governance in pursuit of our constitutional democracy. She is truly an icon of the liberation struggle and continued to be so through our fledgling democracy. Mention must be made about the staff at Parliament, current and former, who have been stung by the loss of Madam Speaker. Some of them are here with us today, and many others have shared their condolences and reflected on working with Frene. One comment in particular stands out when it is said that she could be both inspiring and exasperating at the same time. Those who knew and worked with Frene can, I'm sure, relate to this, but this reflects the impact that she had on those around her. Having personally known, attest to this. We have all benefited from having known her. Comrade Barbara, I had many, many howevers. And even as I was putting together this short input, I had a voice in my head of Comrade Frene saying, "No, Lawson, say it like this, not like that." Thanks are also due to the medical professionals and the caregivers that have been mentioned, who attended to Frene as her health deteriorated. They enabled her to enjoy a level of comfort in her own home before she left us, peacefully. As we say our final goodbye to Frene Ginwala, known to us as Comrade Frene, Frene Masi, Auntie Frene, Mom Frene, Dr. G, Dr. Ginwala, or Madam Speaker, the abiding lesson for all of us to take is to seek to emulate her commitment to the values and the principles of integrity and to apply these equally in our personal and professional capacities. Hamba gashle, Comrade Frene, rest well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Naidu. Thank you so much. I think now we're going to thank all the relatives and the family members, all of them, that have allowed us to have this memorial service. The President, the President of the country, Bab Matamela, Bab Thabo Mbeki, Cabinet Ministers, everyone, leaders from all political parties, the Speaker of the National Assembly, all the speakerage from the National Assembly, the Chief Whip from the National Assembly, members of Parliament, members of the Legislature, members of the ANC, members of the ANC Women's League and the Youth League, all alliance structures that are present today. We truly appreciate this. If you were not here, these memorial services wouldn't be like this. Our Premier of the province, thank you, Premier. We really appreciate that you have managed everyone. DSG, siyabonga kakhulu sisi. We know you have played a very critical role in ensuring that our members are able to come and be with us today to do this dignified memorial service. Kamama, I think we all agree that that was a loyal member of the ANC, a disciplined member of the ANC, a committed member of the ANC. I wanted Mama to show the youth league that linto lengto international mix. Mangithi Suzo manam babona abantwana bale power, you don't grab it.